Welcome, PPCS families. It is so nice to see you all here tonight, and you are joining us this evening on almost Valentine's Day week. If you notice, we are at about 624 people, 25 or so, and we have a lot more people coming in this evening. So we are going to give it maybe another minute or so, and then we are going to get started. We have a lot of information to share with you, and we can't wait to get started. You will notice that for this workshop, your microphone, your chat, and your video features have been disabled. So you will not be able to chat, speak, raise your hand, or communicate with us via audio. We will, however, have open Q&A sections of this presentation that we will take questions from you, the stakeholders, and address those questions, but we are going to do them a little bit differently than we've done in the past. For those of you who are return attendees, welcome back. And those of you who have never attended a Jaguar Pointer workshop, we welcome you. If you have attended, you've noticed that in the past, we have had kind of like a Q&A where you can ask questions and we're responding, and maybe we'll stop the presentation. You've probably seen me live with Miss LeBron a bunch. Don't fret, she's here. She's in the background, making sure we have some things running smoothly for us, but we are not going to take Q&A questions during the presentation itself. During those times that we have specified for Q&A is when we will answer those questions, because we are a very large group tonight with approximately 2,000 people registered. So we have to kind of shift how we're going to do that just a little bit. So I think we are good. It is about 5:34 right now, and I do see more people coming in, but we are going to get started. So we want to thank you for being here. And here we go. So you are here at the Run, Hide, Fight School Safety Protocols for Students. And this is the Jaguar Pointer Workshop. Again, we appreciate you being here. We know your time is very valuable. This presentation did not just happen because we listened to our stakeholders. We listened to the feedback from our advisory meetings. We listened to the information you provide us from your attendance and feedback forms. And that is where this specific workshop generated from. We do listen to our stakeholders, and we are proud to say that we are offering you what you asked for. So today you are going to be hearing from Dr. Kimberly Pizzo, who is the assistant principal at our FSU campus. You are going to hear from the City of Pembroke Pines Police Department, Captain Sean Woolard, as well as from the City of Pembroke Pines Police Officer, Sergeant Kevin Venema, and myself, Erica Kotzer. In the background that you won't see, we have all of our campuses represented in the room with me here at Academic Village. All of your campus SROs are here, and they will be assisting in answering those Q&As that Captain Woolard will present for them. So we have representation from all of our schools should it need to be necessary. So today, our expected outcomes, you are going to learn who the school safety leadership team is for each of your campuses. That's really important to know. You're also going to learn about the Pembroke Pines Charter safety policies and infrastructure upgrades. You're going to gain some knowledge about the Florida safety legislation. You are also going to hear about the ALICE training program that is provided to our schools, and what does Run, Hide, Fight mean for our students? What are those protocols? And then you're going to hear a little bit about what the reunification process is. And I am sure by the end of tonight, if we did our jobs correctly, which I really hope and sure we will, we're going to revisit these outcomes, and I feel that you guys will have exactly all this information. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is our City of Pembroke Pines Charter School Safety Leadership Team. And this is going to be presented to you by Captain Woolard.
Well, good evening. I'm so fortunate to be here tonight, and I greatly appreciate this opportunity. Any opportunity that we have to speak with our parents and schools is highly valued. So without further ado, I'll just introduce some of our school safety leadership team. From the Academic Village, we have Mr. Peter Bear. We have officers Bucknam and Martinez, those are our SROs. And we have Mrs. Melissa Fernandez, who's our school safety specialist. From Pines Charter Central, we have Mr. Sean Chance. He's our principal, the school principal. We have officers Adams and Perez, who are our SROs at the school. We have Dr. Linda Montoto and Mrs. Crystal Shelton. Those are our school safety specialists. From Pines Charter East, we have the school principal, Ms. Chanel Augustin. We have Officer Moncayo, who is our school resource officer. And we have Dr. Maria Garcia, who's our school safety specialist. From FSU Charter, we have Dr. Lisa Spirillo, the principal. We have Officer Lima, who's our SRO. And we have Dr. Kimberly Pizzo, who's our district and school safety specialist. Lastly, we have Pembroke Pines Charter West. At that school, we have Mr. Michael Castellano, who is the school principal, Officer Scopa and Reynolds, who are SROs, and Mrs. Samantha Granson, and Mr. Alan Fow, our school safety specialists. Our K through 12 schools are so fortunate to have at least one or more highly trained Pembroke Pines Police Department police officers on site at all times. And I will turn it over to the next slide.
At this time, we're going to hear from Dr. Pizzo.
Thank you, Erica, and thank you, Captain Wallard. We are so grateful for the support of our City of Pembroke Pines Police and Fire agencies. I want to thank all of our SROs for agreeing to be here this evening, as well as representatives of our safety leadership team for each campus. The safety requires the collaborative efforts of every person at our school to help keep our schools, students, and staff safe. Good evening, I am Dr. Kimberly Pizzo. As indicated previously, I'm the assistant principal at the FSU Elementary, as well as the district safety specialist for all of our Pembroke Pines Charter K through 12 schools. I am entering my 30th year in education, having worked at all levels, starting off as a classroom teacher for 10 years at Miami Northwestern Senior High School in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and then 19 years with our charter schools as an administrator at both the middle and elementary levels. I've also worked in higher education as a professor. Now, I share this with you because this exposure at all of these levels has afforded me a unique perspective to be able to help promote school safety that is age appropriate at all of these levels. So I want to share with you that on February 14th in 2018 at approximately 2:30 p.m., a former student who had been expelled from a school entered the campus shortly before the dismissal was to begin. He entered a 3-story building on campus with a sports bag containing multiple high-capacity firearms. In a total of 6 minutes and 4 seconds, he had shot 34 students and staff members and killed 17 of them. There would have even been more casualties, we're assured, had he completed his original plan, but there were things that happened that prevented him from being able to do this. I wanted to share that with you because as we approach the 4th anniversary of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas tragedy this Monday, February 14th, normal academic instruction of math, science, language arts, and social studies will be suspended at our schools and all those schools across our district to honor those lost. And we're going to be focusing instead on lessons aimed at social emotional health with a day of service and love. Unfortunately, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas tragedy was not the first of its kind, as too many communities across our country over the past 25 years have faced and continue to face similar tragedies. However, this was the first to hit our community, and it brought school safety to the forefront of our state and local leaders. Governor Scott established a Marjory Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission comprised of appointees representing members from law enforcement, legislators, attorneys, mental health professionals, and parents, victims of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas tragedy. This body, over 2 years, worked together to identify safety concerns that were revealed during this tragic event that, if they had been addressed, may have prevented loss of life or at least reduced it. The Marjory Stoneman Douglas report was published and made public on November 1st of 2019. You can access that online and see what their findings were. However, these findings were shared with the state and multiple pieces of legislation were created aimed at improving school safety and mental health across our state. Although Also, it promoted and prompted legislators to allocate additional funding to school districts to implement these safety and mental health mandates. The key legislative mandates were in Senate Bill 7026, 7030, and 7040. I'll be sharing with you this evening a few of those mandates and outlining it for you so that you have an idea of what some of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas factors were that they identified as risks for our schools. An Office of Safe Schools was established to oversee and ensure that all of these safety and mental health mandates were implemented fully in each and every school across our state. They mandated that each of the 67 school districts across the state have designated district safety specialists, like me, that were trained and certified annually on all the legislative mandates, as well as best practices that have been identified by law enforcement and other safety experts to be effective in mitigating and preventing mass shooting events. These annual trainings, conferences are also forums for these district safety specialists to collaborate and share practices that have been effective in small, medium, and large school districts. Safety specialists are about 50% educators and 50% law enforcement across the state. In this case, I'm an educator. However, in other districts, they may come from the law enforcement background. The Office of Safe Schools also monitors and requires annual auditing reports documenting the physical school hardening upgrades, safety policy development, mental health and safety trainings, drills, and threat assessments. My role as a district safety specialist is to support and document the safety practices at each of these campuses in our district and collaborate with the identified school safety specialists that have been identified at each school that were mentioned to you previously, as well as administrators, mental health team members, school resource officers, our local police who are here with us this evening, as well as city safety leaders that are also here with us this evening. Now I'd like to review some of the specific mandates that are listed on the slide that go in these safety laws. First of all, the school physical infrastructure. School hardening funds and grants have been allocated and made available to districts to implement physical campus upgrades and to increase items like fencing, cameras, safety alert technologies, electronic access control locks, etc. You may have seen some of these at your local schools. Our school has invested millions of dollars that have been secured through state and federal funding to improve the physical safety of our campuses. These upgrades are ongoing. As areas of concerns are identified through safety risk assessments that are conducted annually, requests are made and upgrades are scheduled. You can see at multiple campuses that there is currently some construction going on, and over the past 3 to 4 years, I'm sure you've seen many of these upgrades, starting with our exterior perimeter, having 8-foot fencing at all of our campuses. Each school also is required to have an armed SRO, certified guardian, or security guard on campus all hours of operation. We, as we indicated before, are so fortunate to have at least 1 to 2 highly trained City of Pembroke Pines police SROs or police officers on our campus during all hours of operation. Our city police are excellent partners and help maintain high levels of safety at our schools. Many of them, as we indicated, are with us this evening. Schools are also required to have a single point of entry, lock gates, and doors at all times. When the access points are open for arrival and dismissal, they must be manned by staff and then closed when arrival and dismissal have been completed. Visitors to our campus are also screened, as I'm sure you all know, since you have to go through this screening process. We provide our visitors, when we are permitted to have visitors on campus, with ID badges with an indication of the location and time stamp for all the members of our staff to be able to easily identify these individuals. This is conducted via our Raptor Visitor Management Program. This allows all of our staff, as I indicated, to ensure that no one is on campus that is not authorized. Staff are trained to report any unauthorized person observed on campus without proper ID. Also, our staff and city personnel are required to have their ID displayed, as well as our secondary students. We're even starting to have our elementary students have IDs. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. All staff are also authorized to provide through multiple means a physical lockdown using mobile technologies or physical technologies on campus to lock down our campus if they see something suspicious. We are also required to have me, the district safety specialist, trained annually, and I am responsible for training all of our school staff and making sure that they know what is required at the state level. Further, we require that every instructional staff member, teachers and non-instructional staff, that would include clerical staff, associates, cafeteria workers, substitutes, aftercare workers, be trained in youth mental health first aid. This is a 6 to 8 hour course that is conducted by highly trained mental health members of our staff. And this is to train us to identify students that are at risk of suicidal ideation and what steps need to be taken to get them the help that they need. Further, safety and security monitoring of all of our students through cameras and self-reporting. If there is a see something, say something. Our students are also trained to see something, say something. And remember, we do have, and I am going to mention this more, Fortify Florida, so that they can report those incidents that they need to let us know, and they can do that anonymously. We also have to conduct monthly safety drills. I'm sure you're all familiar with these drills. We have lockdowns, fire drills that are done monthly, and we also have bomb and tornado drills that are done each semester to help practice how to respond in each of these scenarios and to build that muscle memory to encourage prompt and correct response. Further, each school is required to have a designated safety team, including an administrator and the SRO and other team members who meet at least once per month to review the safety drills and other safety incidents to have a continuous state of improvement and also to address any areas that need to be remedied. All staff, which includes our instructional and non-instructional staff, must participate in annual active assailant training, which is ALICE and/or Run, Hide, Fight, which you're going to learn more about tonight. This is conducted by our police department, and we are so grateful. The gentleman who trained all of our staff, Sergeant Venema, is here training you tonight. Also, we are required to have our staff trained on Stop the Bleed, which our fire department is so gracious to help us get that training, as well as regular staff safety trainings that are conducted by our administration and our safety specialists at each school. Further, we also have anti-bully training for all of our staff, our students, and we also share this training with our families. We're trying to build more upstanders to help prevent bullying taking place at our schools. Students, parents, and staff are also trained via PowerPoint on that Fortify Florida mobile reporting application that I mentioned previously to anonymously report any safety concerns that may need to be addressed by the school and/or the police, because this is a joint effort using that Fortify Florida. Erica, if you could go ahead and go to the next slide on required policies. So the Senate bill also mandates that each district have several policies and guidelines for the following: active assailant threat lockdown policy, threat assessment teams, visitor intruder control policies, safer space policies, and reunification policies. Our city leadership, in collaboration with our school leaders, our police, our fire leaders, collaborated together to develop each of these policies, and then they were presented and approved by our city commission. So I'll begin with our first, which is our active assailant policy, which is what we're going to be talking a little bit about tonight with the ALICE training. It provides clear language and procedures to follow in an active threat situation. Additionally, our threat assessment policy requires that each school have an established team made up of administrators, SROs, mental health member, and an instructional member. They are trained annually on the state required threat assessment instrument, which is called CSTAG, which means Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines. This instrument was developed by Dr. Dewey Cornell and was the original model used in Virginia following the Virginia Tech incident. And this is the only approved instrument in Florida to assess potential threats. Also, we have the visitor intruder control outlines our visitor screening process, which we mentioned before using our Raptor system. We also, with the assistance of our local police, have identified safer spaces in each of the classrooms and other locations around the campus that in the event of a lockdown, these pre-identified areas are marked so that our staff and our students know where to go to be kept out of sight in the event of a lockdown emergency. Finally, our reunification process and procedures that will be discussed at the end of the presentation. We also have a policy going over all of that. Okay, if you could go to the next slide on Alyssa's Law. So Alyssa Aladef was one of the victims at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. She was one of the 17 who passed away that day. And her family helped to promote this law. And this law was based on the recognition that had students and staff been given some type of advance warning that somebody saw somebody come on campus, which we did have at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. There was a security guard that saw the person coming on campus and did alert via radio. But had he had the tool to be able to hit a button on his phone and be able to alert police and school staff that there was somebody on campus, they would have been able to lock down and know that there was a threat. And so this law put in place and went into effect 21-22 that all schools had to have available to their staff a application that was able to get that response to local police and to their staff instantaneously. That would then signal for you to activate your lockdown protocols. If you could please go to the next slide. So there were nine mobile emergency management alert applications that were approved by the Office of Safe Schools to comply with this ELISA's law. The City of Pembroke Pines and many other districts across the state have selected and implemented the Raptor application. As I indicated before, Raptor is what we use also for our visitor management, but this is an additional extension of that Raptor, which is loaded onto our phone. And if you could see there, that's an image of what it looks like on our phone. And just by a press of a button and a slide, we're able to activate a lockdown. We can also use it for other features, and we use it for our fire drills. We can use it for our tornado drills, for our code red our code black bomb drills. We can also, if there's a medical emergency, somebody is injured on the field, you can hit that. And the great thing about it is it also sends a signal to our first responders that gives the GPS location of the person who activated the alert. So this is a wonderful process, and it also helps us, and we're going to talk a little bit more later, it helps us with our reunification process because it does give the feature on there that once an event is activated, teachers and staff are able to go in and account for every person that they have in their room. Even if we have members of families or we have city employees on campus, if you were checked in, which you will be checked in through the Raptor management system, then you're going to be in the system and we can account for you that you might be in a classroom or you might be in the hallway and go into a bathroom. We can account that you are on campus so that we know we need to know what happened to you and get you accounted for at the end of the event. Okay, you could go to the next slide. Okay, so this is, we're going to be talking about the Fortified Florida. And
no,
so
at this stage, we are going to move into the Q&A time.
Sorry.
So thank you so much, Dr. Pizzo, for that information. We are going to open up the Q&A at this time. I'm going to remind everybody, and thank you so much for not putting Q&A questions in there at this time. If you are having a difficult time hearing, you may want to check your audio settings because we are live and we are operating. So far, we don't see any Q&A questions, but this is the time that you will be able to put those in there. Mute yourself. Sorry, we had an audio problem just now. But please, all questions related to how you get your service hours, I promise everybody, we will address those at the very end. So please, no questions about the hours. And if you have a student-specific question, a family-specific question, or anything that relates remotely to something personal, we're going to ask that you not put those in this form. It's probably not the place for that. But if it is something personal or something that is more sensitive, that is brought up maybe independently with your administration, curriculum specialist, or even the SRO at your campus. But really, we don't want to get into everybody's individual personal time because we don't want to, jeopardize people's privacy. So we see the Q&A is going now, and we are going to take some of those questions. Can you sit here so I can see them? So we are going to look at those and give us just a second, and we're going to answer those live.
Okay, Erica, do you want me to begin answering
Nope,
some of the
I
questions?
got it right here. I have it
Okay.
right here. So it's a few of them. You have names of this app that I can have on the phone to get the update for threat alerts at the campus. That is Captain Woolard is going to address that one specifically.
I'll say, okay, so with regard to the application that Dr. Pizzo had mentioned earlier, the Fortify Florida is actually a portal, a secure portal where you can anonymously report school threats. It's monitored regularly by law enforcement, and we follow up on any tips that are received. The tips on the Fortify Florida application or actually the portal should be limited to tips involving school threats. Anything that's not related directly to a school threat, for example, if you have an incident that you want to report about another student on the campus or about your own child, and by all means, you can report that either to the school administration, or you can also report that to local law enforcement. Did you have another question, or did you have one for Dr. Pizzo?
There's another question here. Are there specific issues that don't qualify for the emergency alert?
I can answer that.
Yep,
So
Dr. Pizzo, can you speak on that one, please?
Yes, I can answer that. So,
and before Dr. Pizzo responds, ladies and gentlemen who maybe have not attended a Jaguar Pointer before, what we do is I go through and read the questions for some people who are logged in just in audio, because not everybody has the ability to see the Q&A. So we read off those questions and then we respond to them. We appreciate you being patient with us tonight. We have about 8 of us in one location, 9 of us in one location, and we have 2 off-site as kind of backups. So we do appreciate you understanding that we are running with a large group here today. But yes, we'll read those off because, like I said, we understand that some individuals do operate only on audio. So Dr. Pizzo, if you can swiftly answer that for us, please.
Yes, so the Raptor allows us to basically address any emergency on there. However, there are other means of communicating if there's an emergency. The mobile device is if you are not in a classroom and able to get to a phone to be able to notify the office. It gives you, like if you're out on the field, it allows you to communicate by just hitting that button. So there basically any emergency can be activated using this application. And it does allow a chat feature as well to chat between staff members on the application as well.
Perfect. So we're going to try and go through these because we have a number of them. Some of them we might not address because they'll be addressed in the second segment of this workshop. So how do parents get informed? We can address in the second half of this. So we're not ignoring your question. It's just will come up in the second part of the presentation. How will kids learn about the information? Is there student training? Again, that will come up in Sergeant Venema's section. Protocols if students are between classes and bathrooms during Code Red. Again, all of that is going to go through the second half. So really your questions right now should only be about what Dr. Pizzo addressed, that legislative piece. When and where are parents alerted about a threat? Again, that will all be in the second half of the presentation. Yep, all of these are really coming from the second half. I'm looking here. What is the place to make sure that a red alert is not initiated inadvertently and cause confusion? All of these really are in that second half of the segment here. There is one here on mandates. Do any of the mandates address requirements for the qualifications of training mental health providers within the school? Dr. Pizzo, do you want to answer that?
Well, we have multiple mental health providers that are on site. We have our SAP team, our student services program, and we have multiple counselors at each of the schools. We also have school psychologists, we have therapists, so we have multiple mental health members on our team that would be activated, and they are highly trained. We also have resources from the police department if need be, and we can also activate resources from Broward County if we need them.
And can you also just let them know the qualifications that are required, Dr. Pizzo?
For our mental health?
Yes, please.
All of our mental health personnel are highly qualified. They meet all criteria. Our counselors have a minimum of a master's degree and are certified through the state. Our psychologists are also certified through the state board. So all of our mental health professionals are highly trained and certified.
Perfect. There is a question here about parents reporting, but we'll probably pick that up in the second half of the presentation. Just looking through these real quickly. Okay, so we're going to move on to the second half of the presentation because I believe it's going to cover a lot of your questions that are here. And if not, then we'll come back to those. All right, so let's move on to the next part, which is Fortify. Dr. Pizzo?
Yes. Okay, so as we kind of indicated before, Fortify Florida is a free, I emphasize free, suspicious reporting application. It is provided free of charge by the state of Florida through the Office of Safe Schools. This is to allow students and families to report to us anonymous tips, as Captain Wallard indicated, that could be potential threats to the school. So if you see on social media or hear something or know something, then we ask that you say something. I just met with a parent today who had some concerns, not at our school, but had some other concerns. And I mentioned to her that it takes everyone to be able to keep our school safe, not just the administrators, not just the police. It takes our students. Many of them have firsthand information, and that firsthand information can be critical in helping to stop a potential threat and keep everybody at our school safe. So it is important that you know that this is anonymous, so you can report it without fear of repercussions. And we wanted to emphasize that.
Okay.
Additionally, go to the next slide, please. As I indicated, it is a free tool for parents and students to submit safety concerns and threats. The more specific the report in this tool, the better. So if you have names and times and dates and locations, anything like that, just by saying, oh, I heard there's going to be a threat. Thank you, but that's not going to be as helpful if you give us, like we heard, there's going to be a threat at lunch at this time, and these are the people that we know are part of it. That would be very helpful to the police and the school administration to be able to try to, resolve it and get to it before something happens. A training PowerPoint is also sent out by our schools annually to promote this application. We share it with our students. They are trained on how to use it, and we send it out to our families each year. Further, we have advertisements on our website in English, Spanish, and Creole. This is also promoted on our parent newsletters, and further, Fortify flyers are posted throughout our school campuses. This application is loaded on every student device on our campus, as is required by law. And all reports go out to school administrators and SROs, as well as local law enforcement, and the Office of Safe Schools in Tallahassee do get these reports. So as indicated by Captain Wallard, really this tool is only supposed to be used for threats. I see all of the reports that come through from all of our schools, and sometimes we'll get a complaint about a teacher or a complaint about a child, and we do want to know that information, but that information would be better served by contacting the school directly or sending an email to your administrator or your counselor. But this tool is really to be used for trying to avert threats at our schools.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to move on to the next slide.
Is there anything you want to add on that before we go to the next slide? I'm sorry, Captain Wallard.
Yep, he's coming.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
From a standpoint of police.
Okay, so as far as Florida, to elaborate on Dr. Pizzo.
Give us just a second. We're having an audio issue with his computer. Sorry, everyone.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Just to elaborate on what Dr. Pizzo said, there's extensive training within the schools on the Fortify Florida application. It's a highly useful tool in which parents can report, or anyone, students as well, can report anonymously threats against our schools. As Dr. Pizzo said, it's critical whenever this reporting occurs, since it is an anonymous form of reporting that's it's actually administered by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, to be as specific as possible regarding the threat, so that it can be followed up on by our threat assessment team members. The police department has a 12-member team that stands ready to investigate all of these threats, or all of these tips as they come in.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next slide, everyone.
Okay, so our students and our staff are trained on run, hide, fight model. These are options on how to respond in the event of an active assailant threat. So the following training will be conducted by our City of Pembroke Pines Police ALA certified trainer, Sergeant Kevin Venema, to help you as parents to understand our protocols and to better support the safety procedures used by our school. So at this time, I will hand over the presentation to Sergeant Venema.
Hello, everyone. So the slide that you just saw was the run, hide, fight, which I imagine you've seen a lot of. It's really not any different than the ALICE training that I'm going to go over with you. It's a very brief version of the training that we give. The only difference between the ALICE training and the run, hide, fight that you may have seen is the way it's presented. A few years ago, I used to teach with the county, with Broward Sheriff's Office. We were teaching the county schools. I don't believe that even happens anymore, but for Pines, we kind of wanted to have our own system, something that we liked better and something that we can kind of modify. So this training platform that several of us are certified in, it's updated all the time. And when we were looking for a new program to use, I wanted something, and the city wanted something that we all felt was actually going to be relevant. I have a daughter who's in a public school, and this is training that I would feel comfortable with teaching people. And it's not something that I would just tell them to check off the box for safety. It's actually something that we believe in and we really enjoy doing. So a brief overview of what ALICE stands for. It's an acronym for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. So I'm only going to go over five of the slides of the whole presentation. There's a lot of fluff in the rest of the video, but we try to make it simple for all the staff to really understand and go over everything. So we're going to quickly go through the slides and just give you an easily digestible version of what we tell them to do. And I'm sure that'll lead into some other questions that you might want us to clarify. And I saw some of the questions on the Q&A that might get covered in here. And if not, we can address those afterwards. You got the next one. So ALICE is a proactive approach. It provides additional options, but beyond traditional lockdown. I don't believe lockdown has been taught in quite a few years. It assumes every event is not the same. So we're not really just teaching someone how to respond to an active shooter situation. This training is used by federal agencies, CIA, FBI, DEA. It's used by county agencies. It's used by local agencies like Pines. We've done this training at all the charter schools, at the Montessori academies, the Franklin academies. We've done it at our city center for all our civilian personnel at City Hall. And this is taught at, it's mostly taught at business, believe it or not. Schools get a lot more attention than businesses and smaller scale incidents. Schools are a little more sensitive, so you hear a lot more about that. As we go through the acronym and I show you the training, you'll see that the alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and escape are not sequential. You don't have to go in any specific order. We just want to give you and give the students and the staff 5 different options on what they can do depending on the situation. Obviously, it increases odds of survival and it is research-based. Next slide. So alert, this is what is going to let the students and the staff know that something's going on. One of them could be an announcement over the PA system. One of them could be sensory input, which is going to be gunshots, screaming, loud noises, something that gets their attention. Now we have text messages, which can just be personal text messages or through some of these apps like the Raptor system and electronic bulletin boards, as our charter schools are pretty good about that. The technology and the way that the training is done at the charter schools and the Franklin Academies and our Somerset Academies are a lot more organized than the county schools, but we don't have any control over that. That's a county thing. So that's alert. Next slide. Lockdown, kind of self-explanatory, but in the training, we obviously go over how to do it and we give them some suggestions. We show them and talk to them about how to barricade a door. We also kind of show them how to not barricade a door. There's a lot of misconceptions about how to actually do that, whether or not the door opens in or out. And some people, by barricading a door, actually disengage the door lock. We've done training before where somebody locked the door and they try to use a chair inside of the door handle. And by inserting the chair, the leg of the chair, they actually undid the latch or the lock and the door was able to open. So we keep it simple. We're not trying to show them, you know, we're not trying to make anyone a Navy SEAL or a Boy Scout. We don't want to overcomplicate it. So we show them ways to put things in front of the door. If the door opens out, we also explain that, because a door that opens out is a lot different than a door that opens in on the procedures of barricading it. Even if the door is locked and the lock works well and the door is barricaded, we also explain, we don't want the students and staff to only rely on that door. We also want them constantly thinking about alternative escape routes. Now, some classrooms, some rooms do not have that option, and that's fine. It is what it is. We also explain what to do in those circumstances, but some classrooms at a lot of schools, there's a door into the classroom and then there's a back door that leads out into a field, and they can get away from the scene and they can get as far away as they can. In the lockdown phase, most classes now have stop the bleed kits and they're trained in how to use those. So inside of the classroom, they have the added benefit of having first aid supplies in the room if it should be needed. Erica, let's go to the next slide. And we're not looking at the questions right now, so I know some may come up, but we will get to those in a minute. So don't think that I'm ignoring those. I just can't look at them right now. The inform phase, again, this is not in any type of order. This is how the information is coming in. It's a continuation of alert, the what, where, when, who, and how. And this is information that's going to the students and staff, as well as what's coming into us, the police department. It can go through the PA system, can go through the phones, it can go through the radios. It's going through apps now, it's going through the electronic bulletin boards. So we're not really concerned with how information is coming to us, because there's actually going to be sometimes too much information. And there's a lot of different apps to use, and it depends on what's working and what's not. For example, when our SWAT team, we responded to the Fort Lauderdale airport shooting that happened 4 years ago. And when we got there, our radios didn't work. There was too many police officers on scene. The system has been revamped since then. It actually works better now. But we were actually using the phone app called WhatsApp. So our team, we were communicating via WhatsApp. So just an example that, you know, you kind of use what resources you have, and there's so many different ways to get information out for you as the parents. That Raptor one is going to be very big and very helpful for you all. Go to the next slide. Counter. So it's not fighting, it's taking back control, it's age appropriate, and it's a personal choice. Now, we don't even really address this much at the elementary schools. Really, the only person that we're going to expect that can do something like this is a teacher at a elementary school. Now, middle schools and high schools, obviously this is something that's applicable, and we show them ways of, and this is a worst case scenario. We're not telling anyone to go after a suspect or a bad guy. We're telling them that should the situation present itself where they're not able to escape, their door is not able to be barricaded, or they're in some type of room. As we know, there's a lot of different rooms in schools and they're all very different. So if they don't have any other options, we want them to know when we show them pretty simple techniques on what they can do in a group. It's not really as effective with one or two people. It is what it is sometimes, but if there's a group of people, we show them an option that they have where they actually have a choice, a personal choice to get involved, and that might be the only option they have at that moment. It also includes, we go over things how, I hate to use the term weapon, but inside of a classroom, there's chairs, there's flagpoles, there's fire extinguishers, there's staplers, there's big heavy books, a lot of items that can be used to defend oneself, even though it's not considered an offensive type weapon or no one would even think it was a weapon at all. Some classrooms have small little baseball bats that are like commemorative bats. They're more of a decoration, but at some point they might actually prove useful if a student or teacher who was age appropriate was able to actually use this technique. Next one. Like I said, this is a very short version. The normal presentation with all the other slides takes about an hour and 15 minutes, but that's really what's applying to the students and the teachers. We're not training you on how to do this. I'm just showing you what we actually teach them, the meat and potatoes basically of it, since you don't really need the rest of it. But if you have any questions, I'll go over to clarify some things. Evacuate, again, this isn't the last option that they have. This might be the first and only option they have. Occupants have the authority to leave the building. The reason why we mention they have the authority is some people might think, some people are huge rule followers, and even under very tough situations, emergencies, they revert back to what they know or what they've been trained on, and they might not realize that they can actually leave. Or they might think that watching too many movies or watching too many TV shows, that by running away, they might get shot in the back. What people don't understand, so, and I think that came up, the whole evacuation thing came up at one of the schools, and parents were wondering why they were leaving. Trust me, my daughter's 10 years old. If she can run away from the school, would I normally condone her running away from school at 10 and running down the street? No, of course not. But I would rather have my daughter not at a school if she was able to safely leave than stay in a classroom or be on a field waiting to become a victim. Students who are elementary, middle, and high school, especially, they're able to leave, they're able to jump the fence and run away. We emphasize that there's no vehicles. Obviously, a person who's panic-stricken trying to leave the scene, a very chaotic scene where people are being hurt or killed, we don't want them driving away, because what's going to happen is they're going to get tunnel vision and they're going to run people over. So we tell them, leave on foot, leave on foot, leave on foot. One of the benefits of people evacuating, if they can, and if it's safe to do so, it removes potential targets. If somebody's trying to harm a lot of people or take a lot of lives, well, the less people that are on scene, the less likely there are of people getting killed. So we want to remove all those potential targets. It also removes a need for as many parents to come to the scene. There's obviously going to be parents that still will come, but if we can remove some of that and make it a little less chaotic. And the schools teach, and we talk about evacuating a rally point. We're not going to be getting into those right now. It's very tactical specific, and it's more of a hindrance to us and the students and staff as far as their safety. That's why we don't tell you all. It's not to insult anyone's intelligence, but we want them to go to some predetermined point. That's only if it's safe to do so. What we don't want someone doing is, let's say they're on the baseball field or a soccer field or some kind of outdoor area of the school, and there's an active shooter, there's some kind of emergency, code red. We don't want them running from where they are to a rally point if that rally point is not in a safe spot anymore. It's just kind of a way to get them to go somewhere where they're going to be grouped up, one common point. But again, that's only if it's safe to do so. They might, in reality, forget where the rally point is. They might not even know where the shots are coming from. And I say shots, it might be some kind of other threat, but they might be just running all over. And as nervous as that might make you as a parent, we want them to do that because we don't want them to be there anymore, unless they're in a classroom already. And speaking of classrooms, I saw somebody had asked the question about, I'm just going to read the question. I took a screenshot of it since it kind of applies to this slide. What protocols are in classes or in the bathroom during a real code? Okay,
He's
I guess I cut off. I'm going to read the question again.
We're going to give him just a second because he's breaking up for some reason. Just give him a second for his audio to catch up. He's going to read the question slowly and then answer that. This came from the Q&A.
So the question was, what are the protocols if students are in between classes or in the bathroom during a real code red? Do the students know what to do? Take them over. So yes, this is a hard part to teach. It's very hard for me to tell somebody. Again, I have a daughter who's in a school and teaching teachers this, and the students, we basically tell them that they have to shut and lock their door. Now, someone might ask, is there ever a time to open the door and let someone in? I'm not going to tell you there's not. What I'm just going to kind of tell you is there's two situations that happened at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. One, there was a teacher who was heavily chastised in the media for not opening their door, and there was a student outside, probably multiple students, that wanted to get in. And everyone came to the conclusion that some of those students could have been saved if the door was open. And I think some of the students in the classroom were upset, and that's how that information got out to the media. And they felt that the teacher should have opened the door. Now, if you're going to have 30 people in a classroom, let's say they're middle school and high school, they're more aware of what's going on. You're going to have a lot of different opinions on what you should or shouldn't do. That teacher that didn't open the door, several of the students outside were killed. Now, on the same note, there was a teacher who opened a door to try to let a student in. And what happened was a student was shot in the back, fell in the doorway, and now the door wasn't able to be closed. And if anyone's ever tried to move someone who's not alive anymore, it's different if you're moving somebody who is alive and can help you. It's very difficult to move a person, especially if you're not a big person or you don't have a lot of help. And then throw in something like a mass shooting. What's going to happen is you lose finger dexterity. You can't think straight. You can't see straight. You get tunnel vision. You only hear certain things. And what ended up happening was that door couldn't get closed, and they were able to take some shots into the classroom. So if you know you can let somebody in, we tell the teachers that that's kind of their moment. I'm not going to tell them that they can never open the door. Again, I'm human. I have a daughter in school, and I'm teaching to people realistically that they're going to have to make that choice. We tell the teachers that, because we're training them all the same way, that the teacher is not responsible for the school. The teacher is not responsible for that hallway. The teacher is only responsible in that moment for their little world, which is the classroom. If the classroom next door is unlocked and they skip a locked classroom door and they go into a classroom, the door is broken, unable to be barricaded. As tragic as that is, the teacher in the next room or the next rooms have no responsibility over those classrooms, because one teacher per 15 to 30 students, that's a heavy, heavy burden. And that's a lot of people to supervise under extreme conditions. So yes, there could be times when somebody could open a door. I would hope that if my daughter was locked out of a classroom and a teacher or student were able to let them in safely, I would hope that option would be made. But I also understand that some people may not know where the threat is. If you're in a classroom and you're hearing gunshots, most people can't tell the difference between gunshots and fireworks. I don't care how much military or police experience they have, they all sound the same. So a teacher may not feel comfortable opening the door, or a student may not feel comfortable opening the door. They might think that it's a trap. They might think it's a trick. They might not be able to see out of a window. They might not even have a window. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's one of the hardest questions and one of the hardest points that we have to teach during these presentations. And so you're going to get into the I guess we'll get to the Q&A at the end.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I know this is not a Q&A section, and I know this is a heavy topic that we're discussing, so we really, really appreciate everybody's understanding. And I appreciate that you haven't blown up the chat completely or the Q&A. But we are going to take some of these questions to be answered. I know it is not that Q&A time, but Captain Woolard has a few that he's going to address with the assistance of the other SROs that are in the room. And Sergeant Venema is also going to assist. And just give us a few minutes. Please hold off on any additional Q&A questions so we can address the ones that are currently here.
I'll hit that first one if you want.
Okay, so Sergeant Venema, go for it.
Another question was, just out of curiosity, if police are notified, usually how long would they take to get to the scene of the school? Well, it should be within seconds because there's going to be an SRO at your school. And just so you know, even when one of your SROs takes off, even if there's two SROs, it still gets filled. I work at the schools on overtime. So a couple times a month, I am one of the SROs, and that you'll see a ton of different police officers from our agency filling in those overtime spots. So when we work those schools, we're not responsible for anything else. We're not cutting grass. We're not moving boxes. We're just walking around the schools, and we're available for severe emergencies. Now, besides the SROs that are working at the school, I can tell you that also being my primary function as I'm a road patrol sergeant, is that in any type of emergency, we can't get to the scene fast enough. We're lucky that local jurisdictions down in South Florida have police officers all over the place. Our shifts have, at least for day shift and afternoon shift, which is what's applicable to schools, we have at a minimum of 16 officers working at a time, and that does not count anyone that's working details. So we could have 30 officers in the city at any given time. If it's during the day, our whole police department is open. We might have 100 personnel at your disposal. So we're going to get to the scene. The officers that are not unseen, there's going to be some getting there within 30 seconds, a minute, some coming a minute and a half, 2 minutes later. So we're going to be coming at different times. But I can tell you that if there's an active shooter situation at a school or at any of our businesses, you're going to see our huge Tahoes going at the speed of sound to get there as fast as they can. I've been to an active shooter situation at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and at the Fort Lauderdale Airport. And I can tell you that the only thing I think of is, what if one of those teachers was my wife, or what if it was at my daughter's school? So to answer that question, we should be there instantaneously. And then the rest of the city, we're going to be throwing in, it's going to look like the National Guard showing up, because our whole agency, whoever's working is going to be responding. And I would imagine that everyone working that can respond will be there within maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sergeant Venema. We are going to swing over the conversation now for some of the Q&A questions to Captain Woolard. He is pulling these directly from the Q&A. Again, please just hold off on adding any additional Q&A questions at this time. Hold off on adding any additional Q&A questions at this time.
Okay, so there's so many wonderful parents. No sound? Okay, so many wonderful questions from parents that are coming in. Okay, so I'm going to read directly from one of the questions here. It says, what programs are going to be created for students in regards to learning on being an upstander? Is it going to be a club to join in a school? So that's an excellent question from a parent, and there's actually several programs that are currently taught in our schools. So we currently have our school resource officers teaching GRADE, which is gang resistance and drug education. That's taught to our fifth graders. There's also the GRATE program, which is gang resistance education and training. There's an Eddie Eagle program that's taught that's in relation to gun safety. And we also have our community affairs unit on a regular basis. Upon the request of our amazing faculty, they'll call us and they'll ask for certain presentations. So they'll come out and they'll talk to the younger age students about stranger danger. They'll advise them on water safety. And then for students in the upper grades, we have our special victims unit that will come out and discuss the potential dangers of internet safety. And I am aware, Dr. Pizzo has informed me, and I've had this conversation before, that the administrative staff, some of the staff of the schools, they have a mental health curriculum that they also are trained in. I'm going to move along to another question here, if I have time. There's a question here regarding how is the school handling drugs? Are there dogs doing random checks? Bathrooms are always a hot point for drug use. So typically what happens in the school setting is aides will monitor the bathrooms and the hallways. And if there are any narcotics or any illegal activity that's taking place, they'll notify the SRO and they'll notify the administrative staff of the school. And upon that notification, if there's any enforcement action that needs to be taken at that time, the SRO was right there readily available, and they work hand in hand with our school safety specialists and our school administrative staff to take that action at that time. A specific question came in for Pines Academic Village regarding the entrances, that question is, how do you manage all of the entrances at the Academic Village campus? Well, during the construction phase at Academic Village, the entrance is monitored by security staff and personnel. Upon completion of the construction that's taking place or will take place at Academic Village, there'll be a single point of entry into the school. Lastly, I'll take one last question here from this list, and it's as it relates to the code red buttons in the schools and what is being done to ensure that the code red buttons are not inadvertently pressed. So the city has placed a cover over all of the code red buttons, and they're very clearly marked. We have a direct line of communication with our school principals and with the administrative staff, and they also communicate with our Department of Emergency Management, and training has been provided to the administrative staff and to the faculty, to the teachers, the educators at the school in the use of the code red button. Right, I'll turn it back over.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both you gentlemen, for responding to those questions for us. We know there are more questions in the Q&A. Please, again, hold off. We are getting to them. It is just a matter of us getting the information from all of the officers that are here today and then having one point of answering. So thank you so much. We are going to move on to the next set of slides, which is the parent, and guardian role in reunification. Dr. Pizzo?
Thank you so much. So as I mentioned previously in the policies, one of the policies that was created by the Office of Safe Schools and the state legislature is that they're requiring that each school district have a policy that is the reunification policy. This process is a 3-part process that we're going to share with you because a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we're going to have a video to go over this with you shortly. But I did want to go over a few important points first before you see the actual process. So if you could go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay. So the reunification process, just so you know, in that little icon, was created actually following this process that we follow, which is the standard reunification method, was created by parents of a victim of a child in Colorado back in 2007. They lost their daughter. It was a hostage situation in a high school, and their daughter was the only victim of that situation. Instead of taking their grief in a negative direction, they took it in a positive direction and created a foundation called I Love You Guys. That was actually the last text message that was sent by their daughter before her death. And they created this standard reunification method and process that you're going to hear about to help schools in the event of an emergency event, reunify children with their families after the event. So Senate Bill 7040, which is one of the 3 Senate bills that I mentioned previously, has required that all school districts have this clear policy and procedures of how to respond following any emergency event. But most importantly, following an active threat event, which is called, as I said, reunification. The purpose of reunification is to safely reconnect children and their parents or guardians following requiring students to be evacuated from the campus and unable to return to that campus. So if we evacuate for a fire, for example, and we're able to go back on campus, then reunification would not be necessary. However, if there was a fire on campus and the fire department took over, we may have to evacuate to an alternative location and then begin reunifying children. But in the case of a major threat, an active shooter on campus, the police would take over the campus as a crime scene. And as such, we would have to evacuate the children and relocate them possibly to a secondary site. And as such, we would then begin the reunification process. Some events, as we indicated, may require the students to relocate to a site that is within walking distance to complete the reunification site. So another one, a water main breaks or a gas leak. However, as we indicated, those major events are the ones that we're talking about that we would have to maybe go to that first site that is within walking distance, and then the children may have to be transported to a secondary site. Now, this could take an extensive period of time. This is not going to happen quickly because we'd have to get the buses there. We may even have to get buses from Broward schools to assist us to get all the children transported. So for example, if it was an academic village, we have over 2,500 students that we may have to be transporting, and that would be shuttling buses and getting them to the site. So this could take an extensive period of time. So in such cases, no one would be permitted on campus and all areas would be blocked off by the police. So it's important that parents assist us with adhering to the following protocols that I'm going to review with you to help promote a safe and orderly reunification process. The reunification site will have water and food services provided for our students and staff to get us through this time-consuming process. So the first thing that I want to share with you is we ask you to please, and I know this is hard, stay at home. Your kids are going to be texting you and they're going to be scared. You're going to be scared, but we do ask again that you stay at home. Do not bother coming to the campus as you will not be permitted on site. You will only make things more difficult for the first responders and the staff to do their jobs. The kids are going to be locked in the school until the police give us the all clear to evacuate the students to the primary and then possibly the secondary site. So we know that there was that incident that happened at the high school that was inadvertently when the button was pushed and the kids were, evacuating, and several of them. And we did have parents that showed up on Sheridan, and all it did was block Sheridan Street and 172nd because no cars were allowed on property, no parents were allowed on property. So again, we do ask that you please stay home. The next thing that we ask is that you stay informed. We will be communicating with you. The city, the school leaders, and the police will post information on our websites, other social media platforms, as well as send you texts and emails to help keep parents informed and what steps, if any, to take next. Be sure that your contact information is current at your school and is correct so that we are sure to make sure that you receive this communication. Also, once you get that communication, be ready and prepared to move. When the school signals you to meet at the reunification location, which will be sent to you via those medias, be ready to go. Be sure to have your government photo ID with you and only send a parent, guardian, or other authorized person who you have on the contact card to pick up your children. If you send anyone else, they will not be released to that child. Now you say, well, so-and-so at the front desk, they know who I am. Well, the problem is in an actual event, chances are the staff that is at that school will not be the ones reunifying your children. So let's say, for example, that there is an event at FSU campus. Our SAFE team staff is not going to be the one because they're with the children. We're maybe at the primary site getting kids on buses. We're not going to be able to take our cars to go anywhere. So we're going to have to wait for the buses to transport us and get us to where we need to go. So we're going to be activating maybe The SAFE team from West Campus, from Central Campus, from East Campus, and city officials may be there helping with the reunification process. They may not know you and probably will not know you. Therefore, they're not going to be able to do that facial identification and say, yes, I know this parent. So it is essential that you do have that government ID so that we can identify who you are and be able to release the child to you. Also, make sure that any person that you do want to be able to pick up your child in an emergency is on that contact card. We also ask that you please be patient, because remember that we may have children that will be in the process of being interviewed, because if they were a witness to an event, the police may need to interview them, which can take some time. So we will be flagging and identifying the children that were witnesses or staff that were witnesses, and they may need to be interviewed. So expect this process to take some time. The other thing is, we want to let you know that the most important thing is for us to safely connect all of the children with their families. Even if it takes 8 hours to do that, we will make sure to stay there as long as it takes to get every child safely reconnected with their families. So the other thing you need to know is some of our children, as well as our staff, may need some counseling. If they're identified because they were very traumatized, they also may be delayed in the reunification process because they are being able to see one of our mental health professionals. So again, be patient, understand that we're all on the same team and we're just trying to get the kids safely back with their families. So having said that, as I indicated, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we are sharing a reunification parent informational video that was created with the help of our Office of Innovative Learning, Karina Raymond, and our City Safety Director, Ken Jude, who's with us this evening, along with supporting cast of our facilitator, Erica Kotzner, and some charter school actors. So at this time, we would like to share the video on what to expect in reunification.
Thank you, Dr. Pizzo. So all of you have seen me on Jaguar pointers, but I am a terrible actress. So please don't hold it against me when you watch the video, but it is done with some great information that will help everybody understand the reunification process. So I am not going to expand the screen because I don't want it to become choppy, since we have over 1,000 people linked in here tonight, and we appreciate you being here. But please pay close attention. This is being recorded, so if you are interested in revisiting this information at any time on your leisure, you know we will always have this on the pinescharter.net website under the Family and Communities tab.
Hello, I am Kenneth Jude with the City of Pembroke Pines Municipal Security Unit. I would like to take a moment to talk about our charter schools reunification process and how together we can maintain the safety of our students. There are a number of situations that may occur at one of our charter schools that would initiate our emergency response plan. Whether this is to evacuate students or release them early from school, the reasons may include severe weather, water, power outages, or even a crisis that is taking place close to one of our charter schools. There are other situations that may prompt families to come and pick up their students in an orderly and controlled manner. This process is known as reunification. In order to make that happen, we ask our students' families to assist us in 3 ways. 1, stay home. 2, stay informed. 3, be ready. The first way to assist the reunification process, which may be the hardest to do, is to stay home. During a crisis, the best way to contribute to an emergency response and the safety of your child is to stay home. We know the parental instinct is to go and find your child at the school. However, by doing so, you can endanger yourself or your child during the emergency response. The police department, along with the school faculty and staff, will be busy working to control the situation. Your early arrival may distract emergency responders from controlling the situation. So please, do not come to the school before being notified to do so. Again, the best way to help keep your child safe and allow for the emergency response teams to effectively perform the duties is to stay home. The second way you can help is to stay informed. The Pembroke Pines Charter School System is dedicated to providing families with information as soon as possible. This process can sometimes be delayed because during an emergency, the information has to be verified prior to dissemination. The City of Pembroke Pines utilizes multiple communication platforms to keep families informed. This will be done via our website, email, and text messaging. The city will also use social media apps, including Facebook and Twitter. Make sure your contact information, including phone number and email address, are up to date in the parent portal. If you find your information is not up to date, then contact your school's registrar. The third way you can help during an emergency situation is to be ready. You will receive notification about when and where to pick up your child, as well as what you may need to bring. During the reunification process, students may be moved to another location such as the city center or another school. When prompted, parents need to respond to the reunification site. In order to maintain a safe and orderly reunification, we ask that only one parent or guardian respond to the reunification site pickup area. Parents and guardians will need to verify legal guardianship with a photo ID. Reunification teams will maintain accountability by ensuring students are only released to an authorized guardian or parent listed on the student record. One final note, please be patient. This process can take time, but working together, we can ensure the safety of all. Remember, in the case of a crisis event, we ask that you stay home, stay informed, and be ready. Safety is the top priority of the City of Pembroke Pines Charter School System.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next slide. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. It does that. Okay, so now we are going to move into your final remarks and questions. So there are a number of questions that are here, and I'm going to turn it over to Captain Willard and Sergeant Venema to answer any that they currently have. And then I'll say, go ahead, you can put additional questions in, but let's try to get to the ones that we currently have.
Let me see the first one. So one of the questions was, would it be wise to set a rally point with your kids other than the one set by the school? So keep in mind that this situation, if it were to occur, is going to be one of the most taxing events of students or staff's lives. The chances of it happening are slim at each individual school, but as we saw that it happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, it does happen locally. So we don't want to confuse people. I'll give you kind of a simpler example. If I give you a list of things to do, to go to the grocery store and get, you've got a list of 10 items. Under normal circumstances, it probably wouldn't be very difficult to go down that list and pick out everything you need. Now imagine going to the grocery store with that list of 10 items and somebody's shooting at you or somebody's trying to kill you and people around you. It's probably going to be a lot more difficult to get those items. So people are going to forget things. They're going to get extremely confused. They're going to be extremely upset. We don't want people to have too many options that confuse them, because what might happen is they might get confused on which point to respond to, and then might think, well, my parents set a point and I'm going to listen to them. And going to that rally point might take them somewhere in the school that puts them in an even more dangerous position. Or they might confuse the rally point that their parents set, with the one that the school set. And just so you know, the point of the rally points isn't necessarily to keep them safe. We want them to barricade in the room. We want them to evacuate, and we want them to counter and find a way to defend themselves if age appropriate. The reason for the rally point is when you drop your kids off at school, the teachers know where they are, the staff knows where they are, they're all tracked. When you pick them up, the staff knows that you picked them up and that student is accounted for. If there's an active shooter type situation and all the students run away, We now have an issue with tracking them. We're trying to figure out if anyone's injured. We're trying to figure out if anyone's deceased, and we're trying to figure out who's missing. So if we have too many students leaving and being unaccounted for, that starts causing problems, because what if they go to a rally point and somebody else picks them up, another parent, and then you're now wondering where they are because we don't know how busy phone lines are going to be. We don't know who's going to be giving you that information. So when the students go to the rally point, keep in mind that it's going to take some time to organize everyone that we have. Now, if your student has a cell phone and they still have it with them because maybe they dropped it, maybe they left it in the classroom, that's very likely. But if they have their cell phone with you, they can text you or call you and let you know that they are safe. As far as us or the schools taking accountability and letting you know, obviously that's something that's going to take time. Hopefully that answered that question.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sergeant Venema. Dr. Pizzo is going to answer some of the questions that came in from safety protocol and sub-training.
Okay, so there was a question about where can you get the safety protocols that I spoke about. Unfortunately, this is not public knowledge. I did give you a general overview, but this is protected by law that we cannot basically share our playbook. So the only people who have access to our safety protocols are staff members and our police officers and city officials. So you would not be able to get access to our safety policies and protocols. That is not public record. The other question had to do with our subs trained on our procedures and protocols. Yes, they are able to go through the youth mental health first aid training. We have them come and participate in our active assailant training and our safety trainings. They also have access to our procedures, because we do have, and I'll kind of share with you just a visual at each of the staff members, and it may look a little different at each of the campuses, the binder and what it looks like, but each of our staff members, and especially our classroom teachers, have a safety binder with our policies and protocols and procedures in their classrooms, easily accessible. And they are also asked to bring those binders with them whenever they leave the classroom. So in the event of emergency outside the class, they have that available to them as well. So yes, the substitutes are also trained.
Perfect. So at this time, if you have any, I'm sorry. No? Okay, I'm going to mute. I think Captain Willard has a question that he's going to respond to now.
Okay, there was a question regarding if an incident occurred on a bus. How would the police respond to an incident that occurred on a school bus? Well, the best answer I have for a school bus incident is the first thing that we would do is, of course, if it's an emergency and there's a 911 situation, or if it's a traffic crash. It was a little vague on the question as far as what type of incident we're talking about. Police have mechanisms to locate the bus and respond immediately. If it's a belated report or a delayed incident report, the first thing that we would do is determine the jurisdiction that the bus was in while transporting the children. The other thing is that school buses, they do have video, and we would be able to obtain the video to further the investigation. There's also a question as it relates to how parents would be notified regarding an incident at the school. Well, I do know that the school has their own method of communicating with all parents, but from the police and the law enforcement standpoint, we do have all of the media platforms, and we do have an office of communications where we put out information on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter as well. So that's those platforms are utilized to communicate police activity as it relates to school campuses.
I can add to that. Also, well, first of all, each of the schools has a communication person that is part of the SAFE team, and they would be activating through emails and text to let parents know. However, if we are in an active threat, we would not be answering any phone calls, and all phone calls would be diverted to a call center through the city. So we would not be answering calls related to the threat because we would be, locked in place or in transit to our primary location. However, we would do our best to communicate, or the city would communicate via emails and text messages.
Okay, thank you so much for answering those questions. Now, I don't want to open the floodgates because it is 3 minutes to 7. If a question has already been answered, we are going to ask that you please not repeat it. You either have heard your responses through the questions that have been responded to vocally over the presentation, or there's been a written response to your question. And again, if it is a personal question, we ask that you go to your school's administration, safety specialist, or your campus SRO for clarification. So we are going to open the Q&A again to load more questions. You're going to have to just give us a moment to be able to observe those, swallow those for a minute, and have our professionals here have a moment to look at those. So just give us a moment and we will look at those and respond. Okay, one of the first ones that has just come in is going to be taken by Sergeant Venema.
So I'm glad you asked because I missed that when we were going over the slides. So the question is, what happens if an incident happened at recess? So recess or in the lunchroom or in any type of like open environment at the school is kind of the same situation. So obviously, if you're outside, there's nowhere to barricade. If you're outside, you're in a big area. Obviously, if someone's using a firearm, that can go long distances. You can't defend yourself or counter in those situations. So it's a little simpler of a response at that point. Is what you want to do is evacuate. So if they're in the back of the school, wherever that field is, let's just say it's one of the recess fields, and there's a emergency situation, a code red, we would want them to jump the fence, climb over the fence, find a way to get off property, and make themselves a harder target if they're moving around. So we don't want them going from the recess area into the school. Even though some of these schools are very large, they might have the ability to go somewhere and get in somewhere that they can barricade themselves in. But remember, they might run to a classroom, think that they can get in and hide in, and the teacher may not open the door, or there might not be anyone in the classroom and the door is locked. So we want them to just leave at that point or just get away. But they might already even be in a situation that's safer than anyone else that's inside of the school. Hopefully that answered that question. If not, you can ask. I'll get this one right there. When will the students be trained and given all this information? I'm going to one-up you and tell you that they've already gotten it at least once. Some of the schools we've trained several times. So we're giving you the very brief version. We've trained them in the presentation somewhere anywhere from an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. And then we do a hands-on portion where we actually run several drills with actors, with Nerf guns, and we show them different options that they can do. So we show them the presentation and we talk about it, and then we actually do it. So unless they're a new student or a new teacher, they've already received all of this training, maybe this year or in years past.
Thank you so much. We see that there are some other questions slowly trickling in. Sergeant Venema just addressed that everybody is trained in this information. So it happens all the time. Every year, our teachers are always trained, and this is something that's ongoing training throughout the school years. Give us a moment to read these.
May I address the question about the Guardian? Okay, so we do not participate in the Guardian program here at the City of Pembroke Pines. We have the SRO program, so we are not participating. We've opted out of the Guardian because we have highly trained SROs and police officers who support our schools. Our teachers a lot of
Okay, so if there are no further questions, I appreciate everybody's patience with us. We'll give it another moment for any questions. Oh, one just came in. Okay, so that's being answered. So if there are no further questions, we're going to move on. We appreciate everybody's patience. So our expected outcomes that we talked about at the beginning of this workshop were learning about your school safety leadership team. At this point, you all know who your administrators are, your SROs, your point of contact, your safe team people at your campuses. That was presented in the very first slide. So if you missed that, you can go back to that. You learned about the PPCS safety policies, infrastructure upgrades. You also gained a whole lot of knowledge about the Florida safety legislation. You learned about what the ALICE training is and about the Run, Hide, Fight from Sergeant Venema and about the reunification process. We know that we couldn't go into extreme detail about some of these because it is for the safety of our staff, our students, and everybody in between. So we do appreciate that you understand that. So this is the one I know everybody is interested in, as well as the information provided today. This is how you get your service hours for being here. We are sitting at 1.1K people attending today. That is the largest workshop that we have had to date. So we appreciate you being here. We know on a Thursday night, weeknight, it is so difficult to be here. And we appreciate you, like always, for taking the time out of your busy day. We know there's after school events and dinners and baths and everything in between, but we thank you for taking the time to be here with us. So we want to make sure that you get your 3 service hours for completing this workshop with us today. So you have the QR code that is there that you can scan with your mobile device, or, and Ms. LeBron is usually really good about just typing it in the Q&A 101 times, the tiny URL that you can type in your address bar. You will complete the Google form to document your attendance and provide feedback. The completion of your form will provide each participant 3 service hours. Now, if you have 4 people in your house that watched this today, mom, dad, grandma, aunt, grandpa, whatever it is, I know we ask that you always log in with 1 device so that way we have enough seats open for everybody. But everybody in your household that attended today's workshop will be eligible for the 3 service hours. So each individual person must complete the Google form. Again, each person. So if mom is going to do it, she's got to do it for everybody. And you can use the QR code or the tiny URL. The deadline to complete this form is by tomorrow. And we say tomorrow simply because then the information has to be sent to the schools, and then the schools have to go through. And like I said, we are over 1,000 people here today. The schools then have to go through that and get those hours awarded. So please be patient with our service hour coordinators. That information will get in there and your hours will be awarded. So I'll leave that up there. Ms. LeBron, if you want to unmute for me just for 1 second and just let me know if it's in the Q&A, the t.ly.
It is on the Q&A and in the chat.
Perfect. So Ms. LeBron has put that in there. Remember, this is case sensitive and it's t.ly, all lowercase, then / lowercase k, and then capital U, capital F, capital C. So it's in the chat, type it in, no www and no HTTP necessary. And we thank you for being here. We know, like I said, that it is a lot during a weeknight, but we appreciate you and your time. We know this was a heavy topic. We want to thank the City of Pembroke Pines Police Department, Captain Woolard, Sergeant Venema, and the entire SRO team, along with Dr. Pizzo and all the administrators and Mr. Jude from the city. We really could not have done this without everybody's cooperation. The oil team, Ms. Raymond, for making our reunification video. It has really been something that we've wanted to share with you, and we are glad that you got to be here tonight. Please follow us on Twitter. You see the handle there at PPCS Oil for any future oil updates. Thank you so much, everyone. You got out a little bit earlier, so go hug your loved ones and get some dinner, but have a great night and we'll see you soon. Happy Valentine's Day.
Stop the recording.
Yeah, I'm stopping now.